Brian, I have to think that some diseases lend themselves more to a virtual approach than others. Are you able to talk about some of the therapeutic areas in which your company is making use of these technologies, and how you think those technologies are a better fit in that area as opposed to some others?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think a virtual trial or a hybrid virtual trial can be implemented in a lot of different, in most therapeutic areas. But I think we still need to do some work to confirm that we don't have significant differences between traditional face-to-face studies versus virtual ones. And there's been, some of this work's been done on a smaller scale, but I think this is where we to really get the industry to embrace it as a whole, we probably need to see a little more data. And I think one of the COVID pandemic actually presents a good opportunity for that. So, as some studies during this have shifted from a traditional brick and mortar type study to more virtual visits, I think there's going to be an opportunity to look at that data in these ongoing studies and look at pre-COVID and then virtual during COVID. How does that data compare, and are there any meaningful differences that aren't attributed just to the pandemic? So I think there's going to be a good opportunity there, which hopefully will roll it out more broadly. At Otsuka, we've primarily implemented these approaches in CNS and psychiatry, which introduces some additional hurdles, but it also has a lot of potential to ease the burden on patients. In CNS or psychiatry studies, our endpoints are much more subjective and are primarily clinician-administered, interviews, rating scales. So there's a lot of considerations that have to be put in place. So there's a lot of time potentially that these patients have to spend, on a teleconference, on a video conference, speaking with an interviewer. And you've got to have certain things put in place for that. So from the patient perspective, you've got to orient them to, how am I conducting a visit? How do I make sure that I'm in a quiet room and things like that? But there's also some additional potential benefits too, because those visits can take a tremendous amount of time. If you think about how long it might take for, in a schizophrenia trial, for example, to go through a very lengthy clinical interview, in addition to being at the clinic and having labs and vitals and other assessments done, those are really long visits. So, by going virtual, you can potentially cut some of that time really down. You can have it done at more convenient time for that patient. And finally, there's also some evidence in certain for certain rating scales, certain symptoms, that having it done virtually can lead to greater disclosure for sensitive topics and potentially get to better data than in a live setting. So
I want to touch briefly on digital tools. There's obviously a lot of digital devices out there right now that we can be incorporating into trials. And I had a couple questions that came up on this as well. But can you talk about some of the digital devices that you're using in your trials and the benefits that you're seeing from those for patients, sites, or for your company even?
Yes, I mean, I think one of the things that's really critical here, though, is that in terms of how we benefit sites, is that we've got to make this as seamless as possible to transition to some of this. So if you think about when we first moved from paper CRFs and paper consent to EDC and e-consent, our clinical sites went from complaining about having shelves and closets full of binders to now we've been providing them multiple different tablets, because a lot of the systems and platforms we've provided are only applicable to a specific tablet or a specific laptop. So I think one of the ways that we have to make this easier for sites is by making these platforms seamless, device agnostic, have full integrations. And we're currently piloting a platform that is fully web-based. It's got a fully integrated e-consent and e-source capabilities, and it's device agnostic. So I think it's these examples of really making it as easy as possible for the sites that are really going to be helpful in this regard. I think from the patient perspective, I really like the idea of leveraging digital tools that that patients are already using. And the two ones that come most to mind are wearables and smartphones. Since patients are already used to them, already using them, they're more likely to continue to use them in a clinical trial. And it opens that possibility of being able to take some of that data and potentially leverage it into some real world evidence. And the challenge that we still have to overcome, though, is how do we connect some of those more health focused type digital tools and wearables and smartphone data. How do we connect that to our clinical trials in a way that they can be actually correlated in a validated way with efficacy and safety data? And then it opens up the possibility of really developing some biomarkers of disease.